I played a Destiny 2 for the first time ever, all to find out if this 26-season-year-old game can still hook a new player, or if it's truly earned the title of Destiny 2.
Now, while usually I get right into the gameplay in these reviews, I gotta address the insane elephant in the room. 150 gigabytes.
Yeah, not good.
But maybe once we load in, we'll see if the game warrants its insane file size. After wading through uncomfortably long setup screens, we get our first meaningful decision: our class. The stalwart and sturdy Titan, the agile and gunslinging Hunter, and the magically attuned Warlock. Now, Destiny is generally called an MMO, but based off the descriptions, these don't seem like your typical tank, DPS, and support roles. Either way, I roll with Warlock cause I love casting spells, and now to character customization. Overall, it's fairly simple. The main draw here being the three races. You get to play as human, blue people, and robot. Beyond that, there's a solid number of faces and hair choices, and an even more surprising amount of colors to choose from. To be honest though, I couldn't exactly tell you what was changing between these robot markings. Either way, I go robot, since very few games let you do that. But as I finish up, I spy something that puts me a little on edge. A Steam achievement saying I've reached level 20. Now, I've reviewed games that speed you through the lower level sections, but this approach is definitely new to me. And now to cutscenes.
Given that I was playing the game completely blind, I was unaware of how heavily involved the story was.
And while I think they actually do a great job of introducing the setting, the faction politics, and even your character's role as a guardian, 7 minutes of cutscenes is a very long time to hold new players hostage. But soon enough, our ghost revives us, and we begin our journey into the world. Right off the bat, we are given free range to run around, and our first ability, a movement ability, a simple hover jump. Run inside and get blown away by the lighting and shader effects. I mean, seriously, look at this. And now for our first funny moment. As the game plays up the horror in this pitch black room with scary noises, I take the directions to, quote, keep moving a bit too literally. And as soon as the ghost lights up the path, one respawn timer later, and we are given our first weapon. And again, I have to give credit where it's due. I know games try their hardest to impress new players, but the detailing on this abandoned weapon, with its cracked optic sight, is really impressive. But with enemies now spawning in, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the game, combat. Destiny classes have their own set of abilities, which are tied to charges or timers. First off, we have our Warlock grenade, which lingers and pulses, pulling enemies to the center, if they could survive. Perhaps the only thing more important in Destiny than combat is, of course, looting. And so we get our second weapon slot, the energy weapon. In this case, a shotgun. Interestingly, this one auto-equips, which helps to keep the combat tutorial flowing, rather than immediately waterboarding new players with the spreadsheets that are the gear screens. And while the shooting is very solid, my favorite part has got to be the flashy damage indicators. Next ability up is our melee ability, which can periodically charge to full power. In my case, I get to shoot out a purple Hadouken. And with our, admittedly formulaic, grenade ability and melee ability set, our next one, of course, has to be the super ability. But more important than that, the musical crescendo. My super ability is more or less a 1,000-ton bomb, painted purple to fit the Warlock theme. But again, the runaway favorite here has got to be the soundtrack. Having gone through the basic combat training, now the game ushers us to the gear screen, where Destiny pulls a little trick on me. In the distance, I can see another player, frozen, because Destiny is actually a seamless multiplayer world, which, while an awesome surprise, also means that opening your menu doesn't pause the action. Welcome to the gear screen, but again, Destiny does a good job of teaching one step at a time, our focus here being our class abilities, where we can read through each or change them out when we get more abilities later. This also serves to subtly teach us about our fourth ability, which for Warlock is a healing pool. this loot box gives us our third and final weapon slot, the power weapon. And if the term power weapon makes it sound, well, powerful, one thing the game doesn't explicitly tell you is that energy weapons and your power weapons have limited ammo, usually restocked through kill pickups. Otherwise, your primary is unlimited. Here we get sucked into a cutscene where we meet another guardian, Shah Han, our main contact for the tutorial section in the Cosmodrome. But more importantly, we get more loot, and this time a gear upgrade. So let's go look at those menus. All gear from armors to weaponry have a gear score, a general indicator of their power level. And while each item has a detailed stat screen, from range to stability to 70 recoil direction, I can imagine most of the early game will be focused on making that number bigger. But now we enter the Cosmodrome proper, and after scanning the area, I remember firsthand that this is a Bungie game. You know, like the guys who made the original Halo. Open sight lines with tons of rocky environmental detail. And of course, you have the coveted dropships, deploying your alien enemies. The story has us tracking another guardian, Maeve, and to help us explore the vast open world, we are given a taste of vehicles. I won't continue to make the Halo comparisons, but come on, this is really bringing back memories. When we reach the facility where Maeve is, we get locked out and have to backtrack to gather some codes, but soon enough we enter the lunar complex. Remember that name. Here we get introduced to another enemy faction, the Hive, half zombie rushers, half armored knights. But as we finally get to Maeve's location, and after some grieving, we complete our first mission. Now, post-mission gives you 30 seconds to hang out, which I'm sure is helpful to sort out all the cool loot you just got, but for now I kinda just run around. After fast traveling back to Shaw, I noticed something off with the map indicators. I'm facing the next mission, but it's actually 180 degrees behind me. I don't know if it's some old school search the area for your objective, but it's a bit strange given the game's very strong use of objective indicators. Either way, we talk to Shaw. Quest NPCs use this sort of cinematic talking mode. The animation is a bit stiff, but it's understandable. What I don't understand is this text overlapping that makes reading up on the lore impossible. Here I find another option to skip the tutorial section, but since I'm new, I stick around. Unfortunately, while I'd say the tutorial up to this point is wonderfully paced, introducing one new mechanic after another,
Things get a little worser paced at this point.
First off, we're going to be retreading a lot of the same waters, but second off, the next tutorial segment is a bit of a power trip, forcing you to spam your abilities on waves and waves of enemies. It's closer to a live test range than an actual educational tutorial. Which is what I would say if it didn't also teach you about two critically important class features, aspects, which are like general passives, and fragments, which modify your class's abilities. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to alley-oop abilities at mindless enemies, but it just feels weird to hide two key class upgrades in a 10-minute power fantasy after giving the option to skip the rest of the tutorial. Regardless, I continue with the extended tutorial, with the next mission having us fight through the same lunar complex, but having us eventually escape to the other side. Here I run into my first pickup weapon, which strangely pulls you into third person, but they are a nice change of pace. Shut off an array, defend the control room, and another 30-second debrief.
At this point, about an hour and 20 minutes in, I take a little break, but when I log back in, I get shown a completely different cutscene.
This time for the more recent DLCs. Now, if you saw my video on modern day World of Warcraft, you know that that game shows you the updated expansion cinematic on the very first launch, which confused me entirely. So kudos to Destiny for showing brand new players the right things. Back to the tutorial. We are given our first summonable mount, which, despite the tooltip not disappearing for some reason, makes traversing the open world much nicer. And on to our next mission. I do like how the missions make use of the open world, giving context and firefights to the elaborately designed set pieces. Then the game tasks us with collecting these balls of energy. I'm gonna be 100% honest, this is the most disappointing part of the game so far. I mean, you just gave me a mount, this was supposed to be a layup. Back to the lunar complex, but this time through a different section. I run into a very conspicuous looking device and figure out it's some sort of trap. And in the next room, we encounter our first named enemy, Navoda. It's sort of a foe encounter, but between dodgeable projectiles, respawning traps, and of course waves of enemies, it's a nice taste of what a boss fight in Destiny could look like. But after nearly defeating Navoda, and a silly little experiment,
Nobody likes to be silent. I'm glad you're here.
we are given the clear to head off to the last city, the main hub city in Destiny 2.
The last city.
Here, our ghost gives us a tour, introducing us to the main power players like Commander Zavala. I misunderstand how elevators work. And then we meet our warlock tutor, Ikora Rey. Through her, we can unlock subclasses, as well as learn new abilities to replace our current ones. There's also a gunsmith, self-explanatory, and our last stop, the Battle Pass guy.
I mean, we both knew it was coming. Oh, and placeholder text.
But Commander Zavala sets us up with our first strike mission, which puts us in a team queue. Unfortunately, they don't call it Deadstiny for nothing, so I'll be going it alone. Luckily, as I get to culling mobs, I do get 2 joiners, and thus begins the true Destiny experience, clearing rooms with the homies. There isn't too much to say here, it's all good fun, although as we make our way, I can't help but be impressed by the fact that it's still a seamless open world, and there are just people going about their day as we run through a mission. Regardless, the mission ends with the real boss fight against Navoda, denoted with the ever-present boss health bar. But after a few minutes and 1 or 2 team deaths, we finish off Navoda. Upon returning to the last city, we increase our Guardian rank, which helps to, again, get off features as a means of not overwhelming players with a million systems. Unfortunately, I still find a way to get confused, as now the game opens up with 2 main mission paths to choose from.
So I decided to do a little bit of both.
First, visiting the new planet and being graced with a much different landscape. My first mission asks me to return to the Cosmodrome and defeat 3 captains, which after doing, I get soft-locked? Or at least I think I do. I'm supposed to destroy the Dust Walker, but with nothing resembling a walker in sight and no white diamond to show me the way, I fumble around for a bit and decide to switch gears to the other campaign. And man, was that a good decision. The mission has us living through the final moments of one of the higher ranking Guardians, all in this wonderful space station set piece. Again, I am alone, and it's hard to get an appreciation for these elite enemies when they evaporate like that. But otherwise, it's a nice little mission. The main draw here, though, is the lore of the character Cade, who has an entire 6-minute action cinematic planted right into the middle of the mission. I didn't know much about Destiny heading into this, but the focus on high-quality cinematics was a welcome surprise. Either way, we are spit back out into the space complex, but not before a final boss fight against a massive abomination, which once again introduces spicy mechanics like these damage wards which protect enemies. But like everything else, it falls, and we watch the final moments of Cade. But with just about 3 hours logged, I think it's time we make our conclusions. Honestly, for a game as daunting as Destiny, the tutorials do an incredible job of drip-feeding features. I think the cinematic experience can be a little bit long-winded, with probably 30 minutes of my 3 hours being cutscenes, but otherwise, Destiny shows its strength well. Solid ability-based combat, pretty little set pieces, and of course, the endless pursuit of just one higher number. If you made it this far, don't forget to like, and consider watching another one of my videos here.